Alright guys, time for a watch review, and a cheap watch nonetheless. This is the Invicta 8932. Invicta is the brand everybody loves to hate. The hatred for Invicta is insane. I understand it, but is it going to stop me from buying one? Nope. I only bought this actually, to be honest, because I ended up catching a sale on Amazon for like $36 for this, which is really not a bad price. Normally it's around $50. Well, see, one of Invicta's things is they price these watches out like this is a $200 watch, and then it sells for $50. And it's like, oh, you're getting a $200 watch for $50, but in the end, the $50 is the normal price. It's kind of like Harbor Freight and what Harbor Freight does. And then I ended up catching a sale for $36, and $36, I thought this is kind of a nice, like, office-friendly, slightly dressier watch that I could wear around the office. And I really kind of like divers, and this is a clone of the Submariner, which of course is going to tick people off as well. People hate clones, some people love them, but of course now you have Invicta, who people hate, and they made a clone, or a homage, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, double whammy. Alright, so why do people hate Invicta? Well, because Invicta makes really big, gaudy, gross, huge, gigantic watches. And they put a retail on them of like $800 or $600, and in reality they sell for like $100. So they massively inflate the prices, and people do buy them sometimes at those full prices, and that kind of leaves people with a bad taste because they find out that they massively overpaid. But in the end, they're not worth anywhere close to that price. Now, most of the Invictas, at least the lower level ones, are just simple quartz watches, and they use a very simple, really cheap quartz movement. This one here has the PC32 movement, which is pretty much one of the cheapest quartz movements on the market. So that's the kind of movement you're going to find in your $10 and $20 watches. But they put this into a $50 watch, and the watch looks nice. Visually, it's very appealing, and it's made of good materials, but they use kind of crappy movements. Now, on their higher-end watches, they do use Seiko movements and some other higher-end movements, but for a lot of these cheaper ones, people feel it's kind of a waste because you're spending all that money and you're getting, kind of dollar store quality movement out of them. And plus, there's also issues with QCs. Invicta is very famous for having quality control issues, especially the last couple of years. Look on Amazon, it's no secret. A lot of reviews of these things showing up dead in the box, hands missing, stopping after a little bit of time. So there's definitely a QC problem going on there. But in the end, Invicta is a very old and very well-known Swedish watch company. I think they're based out of Florida now, but they've been making watches since the 1800s. These are not some new guys, but they just obviously made some bad business decisions over the last couple of years. So let's take a closer look at this guy. Now, if you're not familiar, guys, with what a diver is, a diving watch usually is going to have some level of water resistance. And being, this is a cheap and inexpensive watch, I'm not going to trust that water resistance. And let's face it, I'm not going diving anyway. I just like divers. What you have is this rotating bezel. And the idea behind this is to use it as a timer. And the idea being divers, need to know how long their tank's going to last. And so what if you jump in the water, you look at your watch, and you forget the time? So in the days before, digital watch movements, you could set this to the minute hand, and then wherever the minute hand was would tell you how long you've been. So in 20 minutes, that minute hand will be on 22. You can say, oh, yeah, I've been in there, when it hits, so basically you can use that bezel to tell how much time has gone by. Now this bezel is actually very stiff and very rigid, so there's going to be no issues with this thing sliding around accidentally. I know a lot of watches have a lot of slop in that, but this one's actually very tight, and it has very nice clicks to it. Whatever ratcheting mechanism in there is actually done very nicely. The band is stainless steel, and it looks to be solid links to me, but man, is it uncomfortable. This is a really uncomfortable bracelet. I have an 8.5-inch wrist, and I had to take out, I think, 2 or 3 links, so it is a very big bracelet. The clasp is sheer garbage. It's thick. I'm surprised it's actually thick and built fairly well, but it just the way it's crimped and holds, it's just got a little kind of detent there that holds it, and it snaps in, and then your clasp goes over it. It's very difficult to open. There's like almost nothing to get your thumbnail under there, and it really is difficult to get that open if you don't have a little bit of thumbnail. And the clasp is just very tight. I'm sure that will wear with age, but I don't like it. It's very difficult, and I do intend to replace this band. I mean, it looks okay. I mean, it's nice, shiny stainless steel. It looks like solid links, you know, and they're very easy to take out. You just punch that pin out, and then you can take out the links. No big deal there at all. As I said, it's got that really cheap movement. You got your stainless steel back there. 200 meters, wouldn't trust that at all. Alright, so we'll take a look at the dial. And what you can see on this guy is you have your markers. All have lume painted on them, as well as the hand and the second hand. So if you leave this out in the sun, it will glow for a considerable amount of time. And just like the Submariner, it has a little magnifying glass over the date, which in this one you can see is fairly well lined up and reads fairly well as well. So you can actually see and read the date pretty clearly on this. With lots of cheap watches, what you see is the hand's not lining up, but you can see when we look here, see how that second hand kind of doesn't really match up with the numbers. I don't care about that stuff, to be honest, guys. I know that the real watch dorks do, but I don't care if it falls in between. Not my problem. Don't care. Not that big a watch dork. Not for $30 at least. I mean, maybe if I spent a few thousand, I'd be upset, but nope. Your crown here is not screw-in, which oftentimes, I know that's another complaint as well. You want a screw-in crown when it comes to divers. That way it helps with waterproofing. If you were to pull this crown out, it would leak like a sieve. You adjust it by pulling it out, you know, part way to do your date and the rest of the way to do your time. So that's it. It's a pretty simple style of watch. This has been around a long time. As far as, I don't know how long the Submariner's been around, that Rolex has been making that bad boy, but yeah, people have been cloning it for probably 50 years, I wouldn't doubt. But this watch, unlike a lot of the Invictas, is pretty small. It's not a big, gigantic watch. It doesn't look ridiculous on your wrist. A lot of Invictas look ridiculous. They're so big and gaudy. I know it's the style, guys, but I will never like it. I will never like it. I will never like big watches. Let me get the goo off that so it actually looks nice. All right, so you can see on my wrist, 8.5-inch wrist. It looks pretty good. Doesn't look too big, doesn't look too small. Focus, you can see all the gory details of my arm hairs. I think it looks fairly nice on my wrist. It looks good, you know, when I'm wearing kind of shirt and tie for court and things like that. It doesn't stand up very much. There's nothing really to catch on things. There's no kind of sharp corners or anything. Everything's kind of rounded and chamfered. So this does work pretty good as a carry watch for me, especially how tough I am on watches. Oh, is this tough to get off, guys. Like I said, guys, this thing is really tough getting it off the wrist because that clasp is so. But yeah, so like I was saying, guys, it's edges are all nice and chamfered. There's nothing big and bulky hanging off. Everything's very nice and smooth. I mean, you look at the close details, fit and finish wise. You notice everything's nice and polished. You know, even the edges, the places that won't be so noticeable are all kind of polished. You even look on the back side, and here's polished. Everything's polished. Everything's very nicely well done with this. It's really, they took a lot of care on the outside. It's just such a shame they put such a crappy, cheap movement in it, you know? And, I mean, granted, that crappy, cheap quartz movement will be more accurate than most mechanical watches out there. Probably a vast majority of mechanical watches it'll be better than. And it will probably last a good 10, 20 years. Who knows? Maybe more. Maybe a year. I mean, that's the thing about cheap movements. You never know how long exactly they're going to last. So, with something like this, at 36 bucks, if it lasts a year, I can live with it. You know, at 50 bucks, I wouldn't buy this at 50 bucks, guys, to be honest. I'd like it, but not that much considering, you know, what I know is inside. But for me, 36 bucks, I think it was a nice price. I'll wear it. If I break it, I won't cry. If it dies, I won't cry. But overall, guys, I like it. I've had a couple people say, "Hey, it's a nice watch," and you tell them it's Invicta, and they're like, "Oh, you know, most Invictas are really kind of nasty." And I say, "Well, they do make some kind of restrained, nicer, you know, subtle models, and they are out there, and there are good deals to be had on them." So, just wanted to review this quick one and show you this little guy that I picked up.